Now I'm looking at rerouting the loom, and that's obviously complicated because it's a tight squeeze already and it was all covered up by the fairing. I want to put it behind the frame so I can cover it somehow with that mesh or whatever, and that brings me to the next stage, because all this stuff I've disconnected from the radiators, and you bring it up here and got it clear of the forks, labelled all that stuff so I can see what's what isn't obvious at least, and come to this kind of crux situation here. Firstly, that's split, which is not good, and obviously this ain't gonna fit through that little gap. So next is to drain the radiator and the cooling system and take the radiators off, which is probably a good idea anyway, honestly, because I might want to clean them up. So having moved the radiator forward just a little bit, that's all I needed, managed to get the whole of that harness free of the front, and of course, you know, there's like a foot or more length in it than I'm gonna need. So now I've got to work out where I'm going to reroute it, and obviously it used to kind of sit here, and although this is integral to, it's got some pipe work attached to it, so I'm guessing it's integral to the cooling system in some shape or form, but obviously it kept the loom away from the heat of the cylinder. And if I tuck it down here, it's going to be bang up against that hot motor there, so that's not going to be good. But given I've got extra length, I can probably route it up higher, up there, by the air intakes, and there's a little bit of room, and I really don't want to have to be cutting and joining it all, but there's just so much extra, I think I might have to. It's going to be hideous because there's so many wires. First things first, I think I'll get this mofo out of the way so I can see what I'm doing, and that's not easy, honestly, just little Allen bolts there. It is so crowded in here, it's unbelievable. So I've got the fuse box off, as you can see, but I can't kind of feed it through. There's this buddy here, this hose. I'm guessing it's a breather hose because it hasn't got a hose clamp on it, so I guess it's not under pressure and there's no fluids involved, so I might peel that off. And there she is, free of the mount and back in what little space we appear to have here, but of course the fuel tank sits down in here, so I'm not being easily fooled at this stage, as I have done before when I forgot the battery went under the seat. But at least it gives me a little bit of room to work with here now, in terms of finding out a different route for the loom to the front. Looking at everything I've got to squeeze through that gap, I've identified the biggest thing, because if that won't get through, then it's a non-starter. And it might be that, but it's not. Well, it might be, who knows, but anyway, I think it's that, which is a couple of random relays, so maybe I cut off all this shielding here and find out if I can put them somewhere else, honestly, and maybe I have to cut it all the way back here and find that I can mount them anywhere I like. So even if I do use those side panels, the wiring loom is still able to go behind that in its new casing, so that could work. So actually I rather like this solution with the original side panels or of the alternatives, and that loom coming underneath, because the fairing used to meet that little blue side panel, and of course now there's no fairing, so that kind of fills the gap nicely in between the frame, honestly, because otherwise it's going to be, bottom end of the tank. So yeah, I think that's the solution. I like that idea. Even if we have to run 2 of these, because there's a lot of wires, let's be honest. So one goes up here and covers up all that, like that. And then the other one comes down here and just kind of disappears. It's a bit Borg for you Star Trek fans out there. Trekkies. And basically I'm going to cut this sheath, so I've got more wires to play with individually, because getting all that through there and the sheath is going to be a nightmare. And then I'm probably going to cut that sheath as well, all the way back to here. So I've got individual stuff to play with, and I can route it where I want, and we'll see how that goes. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, it's a daunting prospect of spaghetti, as only the Italians know how to put together properly. Now it's a question of passing all this spaghetti through individually, as I've already done with this relay, through that tiny little gap, so we can feed it up here where there's plenty of room. This should be fun. Not going to video this either, because that would be boring. It might have seemed initially like a horrible idea to expose all this wiring, but actually it makes a lot of difference, because I can lay the bare wires here kind of flat almost in the smaller gap, while I can feed through the individual big items like the speedo and the horn that I won't be using through the larger gap. Yeah, there's always one that won't play ball, and of course it's this big mother. As usual, she's gonna fight me every inch of the way. But that said, once I drain the radiator, because I've now established that this pipe here is coolant, so there's a rubber hose there that connects it, and I can loosen that off, and then it comes down here to the front. Yep, that worked, and so did that, because where is it? There it is, on the other side. Yeah. I'm wearing the appropriate scruffy and old t-shirt for the job. So while it looks like a horrible tangled mess, it is, but it's because it was all part of one loom. And actually this guy, wherever he goes, if you trace it back, it's just one little hiccup there, and then I can separate it completely all the way back to here. So I'm gonna cut and splice that so I can treat this guy with complete separation, and I'm going to do that systematically on everything that I can, just to give me more flexibility and tidy it up. Back of the tool holds the wire in place firmly, whilst the front does the stripping. One swift action and a blurry camera focus, and one stripped wire beautifully. So what I do with these guys is I get the I get the bare metal in that middle bit where there's some solder actually in the plastic, and then I just melt. It's going to be difficult on video. I just melt without burning your hand, melt the plastic on that end, so that effectively grips it to the outer casing of the wire. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then melt the middle bit to fuse them together. So both sides are now fused in at the end, and I'm just going to melt that middle section there to solder them together. Not that they need it, because they're already well intertwined and connected. So that's all good, and those torch lighters are actually pretty efficient at doing this. I might just, you can see on this left hand side it still needs a little bit of heating up and clamping down, but yeah, great little connectors. And now I'm going to just tidy that up with its own little sheath for wherever I route it, but that will keep it all nice and together and protected. There it is, all wrapped and ready to go. Well, I think that's enough spaghetti for anyone in one sitting, so we'll come back and do some more wiring another time. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel and do tune in again.